Hey guys, welcome back. As you know, it's been a few years since I last posted my previous video. Uh, I am going back into on Showdown. I will be playing a few more games and showing you guys more tutorials as I did in the last one where I started with the basics, which was the menu. This video is going to be the basics on meleeing. The reason I chose meleeing as the basics is because pretty much everything around this game does involve having a pretty good melee weapon. It does influence your playstyle quite a bit, and actually, for some people, that may be their whole playstyle, meleeing. With the melee options in this video, I'm going to get only in the basic ones, which is going to be your ones in the secondary slots. Not your primary weapons, not any consumable items that you can technically melee with, just going to be your four primary melee weapons. Uh, Before we get into it, let's talk about what happened on my break. So, I did end up moving out, and the place I moved into, the internet, was pretty crap. I could not really play Hunt Showdown for too much. I tried to, I really did, but I will constantly have ping spiking issues, and with that, it does make playing a lot more difficult. For example, I could play for a few games and I will get the ping spike issues, and it really wouldn't be too big of an issue, but after you lose two or three fights because of it, you get a little tilted and you end up stop playing. So, before we get into the video, let's start. Let's just talk about what has really changed in Hunt Showdown. And oh boy, there is quite a bit. There is a lot more new guns. So, as I said, I haven't played this game that much since the time, but there's quite a bit new guns and a lot of new DLC hunters. Uh, so there is going to be a lot I'm learning as well as trying to keep up with everything. But it's still going to be a lot of fun for me to get back into the game, even with the knowledge I have now and learning all the new guns and all the new spots, and make everything a little bit more fun for the game per se. Now, today, even then, melee weapons, the all of them are pretty much the same they've been since the game came out. They all have their own overviews. So just to do an overview of what they are, you got the knuckle knife, the heavy knife, the knife, and the dusters. So let's get into it. All right. So let's get into some stats before we start talking about the weapons themselves. Primarily, the first one we want to bring up is the fact that the types of damages these weapons do. So you have three different damage types, which is rending, blunt, and pierce. Rending is any slash type of damage, which does cause bleeding if you do hit someone with it. Then you got blunt, which is any blunt damage done to someone, and then you got pierce, which is any stabbing action piercing into someone's skin. The next stat that we want to talk about is stamina. We're just going to do a quick overview. You have a stamina bar underneath your health. It is at 100, and it does take some time for it to come back to 100 if you do use it. Now, the next thing we want to talk about are the mobs. There is a few different mobs in this game, although I won't get into it in this video because there's going to be another video that is going to explain them a little bit better in depth. But primarily, the ones you want to notate, and I will put it on screen here for you, is going to be the Grunt, which is your standard enemy, the Armored, which is a strong and powerful enemy that is covered in armor. It is going to make them a little bit heavier hitters, and it does take a little bit more to kill them. Then you got the Hive, which is the bee lady, the lady that's covered in bees. The Emulator, which is a man that's in fire, quite literally in the fire. He is a fire. And then Meatheads, which are the big bubble kind of guys that just walk around and they don't do anything till a leech hits you. Then you got the pack type of enemies, which is the Hellhounds. They're basically demon dogs. And then the Water Devils, which is those worm-like kind of creatures that are in the water that bubble up. Yeah, those guys, stay away from them. It really doesn't matter what you have as a melee, they're going to get you. It's really hard to melee these guys, so try not to. Now, the last thing we are going to get into is damage multiplication. So, just to keep it as an overview, upper torso, the damage multiplication is 1.0. It's in the game, they call it true damage. That means there's no added damage, no removable damage. The limbs, including the hands, which is why you got to be careful. The hands do count as limbs here, and they will take a hit if you shoot someone in the hands or stab them. And that is 0.75. And then your headshot is about a 2.0 multiplier. Alright, let's get into the stats with the knife. The knife does 52 with a light attack and 105 with a heavy attack. The two types of damage types the knife does is rending and piercing. The rend damage comes from the light attack and the piercing damage comes from the heavy attack. The stamina cost that the knife has is 20 and 25. 20 being for the light and 25 being for the heavy. Not much of a difference, but it does make one minor difference here. You can do 5 light attacks or 4 heavy attacks. Alright, so let's get into the knife. The knife itself has a few different uses to it, but it still has quite a bit of drawbacks, which might make you want to go to a different weapon of your choice. Now, in my opinion, I think the knife is the most popular weapon in the game to carry as a secondary or as a primary knife option, but it does have drawbacks to just make it not my personal favorite, or really not even on top of my list, to be honest with you. One of the main things about it is that the knife does have a large stamina drain. Even with the light attack, as you can imagine, 20 for a light attack and 25 for a heavy is pretty much some of the highest you can get. Now, it does have one major thing that everyone loves for it, is the amount of panic you incite in someone when you're running at them with a knife. Even compared to a heavy knife or a duster or anything else, the knife itself just adds a lot of fear into someone when they're running at them. Now, one of the main reasons for these fears is the fact that this thing has a longer range than some of the other melee weapons as well. And what do you mean by range? You know, they're both melee. How can there be a range? Well, you actually do get just a tad bit more stab out of it. So it goes a little bit farther than one of the other knives will, per se. Some of the other major things that I do think that do involve into it is that I still can cut Concertina because it's a rending on the light attack. So when you're stuck in a corner and you're trying to get out of it and there's Concertina in the way, you can, cut through it. So let's go to one of the target dummies and then let's see how to use this properly. All right. So onto the knife and how to use it. So one of the main things you remember with the knife is that you only get about 4 heavy hits out of it before you have to stop what you're doing. And that does allow you to chain up to 4 hits. If you have more mobs than that, you will have to walk away from it, but you can get a chain of 4. Now, when it comes to hitting at other hunters, you always want to aim for the head with any melee weapon. It does the most damage and it tends to one-shot kill them in almost any situation. Now, let's say you can't really get the headshot off or you miss the headshot. You gotta remember, the knife, straight to the chest and immediately slash afterwards. So, best way I can show that to you is that's the fastest way you're gonna kill someone if you whiff the shot. Of course, headshot always makes a difference. You can easily go on a chain as soon as the stamina shows you. Stab, 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 stab. And that's about it. Once you hit that, you're done. You can't do it. Now, with any melee weapon, if you are out of stamina, the moment you get even just a tad bit of stamina, you can go for a heavy attack. You don't need the full 25 to do it. It just takes 25 away. Alright, now let's talk about the stats for the heavy knife. The heavy knife does 72 for a light attack and 120 for a heavy attack. Both of those attacks are rending damage, which means they're both slashes. And the stamina cost on the heavy knife is 9 for a light knife or 25 for a heavy attack. Which means basically you get 11 light attacks or 4 heavy attacks. This is my personal favorite knife. It's actually sadly not the one I use the most, but it is my personal favorite knife. I love this thing. It has a low amount of stamina use when you use the light attack, which is kind of all you ever need. That's the main thing about this thing that I love. You can go through a horde of zombies with ease. You can do anything you want to do with ease. It is great. Now, it can be out-dueled by the regular knife. If the other person knows what they're doing, they can stab you before you can hit them. So that is a major downside to using the heavy knife. Now, when it comes down to it, I honestly think there's really no reason to use the regular knife over the heavy knife unless you really do love that PvP aspect of it. The pierce is nice, but it's just not worth it. Now, one of the other major things that you can do with this is concertina. So if you have concertina underway, how the knife takes 2 hits to cut through it with a light attack, the heavy attack only takes 1, and it takes more out for each one. So you can easily cut through these things without a problem. That is one of the main reasons why I love this thing. You can go through Concertina with ease. You can kill multiple mobs with ease. Concertina is really not an enemy anymore when you're using this. But of course, that low range does make a difference. Of course, the heavy attack just takes more out for each hit. Alright, now let's go look at how to use this thing. When it comes to dealing with hordes, this thing is pretty much one of the best, if not the best in my opinion. Light attacks only use 9 stamina, but it still one-shots grunts. So a horde of them can be killed with quite a bit actually, with a lot of 11 of them. 11 hits, so as long as you have a horde less than 11, you're done, they're done. You can take care of them all. Now the heavy attack still costs 25, just like the regular knife. But as I said, because you don't need to use the heavy attack to kill a grunt, it's basically a 9 to kill. Now, heavy attack wise, the knife is a little bit better, mostly because it has range. And let me show you what I mean by that. So, this might not hit on that regular knife, or the heavy knife. The heavy knife, it does. So, of course, in this exact circumstance right here, a regular knife will win. Now, am I saying you can't just walk forward and smack? No. But anyone that truly knows what they're doing with a knife will always be able to outduel you with a knife. But most of the time, when you're dueling, you want it with a knife, you jump back as soon as you hit. Prevents the person from getting the secondary hit. With the heavy knife, you kind of want to jump forward. To the side, jump forward. You have a long arching sweep when you use this thing. So use it. Alright, now let's talk about the stats for the Duster. Duster does 31 light damage and 67 heavy damage. Both of them are blunt. The stamina cost for them is 5 for a light attack and 10 for a heavy attack, which basically means you get 20 light attacks or 10 heavy attacks. Alright, let's talk about the Dusters. Most people's second favorite weapon. I personally don't like the Dusters too much. It just doesn't make sense in my opinion for what it is. It's too low of a damage, and it's not a good fallback in case you have to kill someone by beating them to death. It does have, low stamina consumption, so you could go through hordes really easily, and you can kill, most grunts without issues, but it does have quite a few weaknesses as well, too. It cannot kill the armored units easily at all. It takes quite a bit to get rid of them. Now, the main reason why everyone likes these things is because of emulators. Emulators are very annoying, but you can kill them with ease with this. It's 3 hits and they're done, and they're on the ground. Honestly, if you have to choose, you can choose these if you just like the fact that you can go through a horde easily and kill emulators with these. If nothing else really bothers you, then, it is, they're pretty much the best choice if you only want 2 things out of them. Let's talk about how we use these things. Dusters, as I said, are personally my least favorite to use. The damage around them is not that good. Now, of course, as I said, you still can one-shot to the head to any hunter, but it is kind of annoying to do the whole process of, especially if you do miss that one shot, you kind of tickle them. There's no getting around it. You miss and hit them in the arm, it's a little tickle. It doesn't do enough damage to kill them, even if they've been hit once with a pistol or something. So, I'm personally not very fond of it, but some people can be. The only advantage you have onto it is that's very low stamina usage, and it still can kill emulators and one-shot grunts pretty easily. Alright, now let's talk about the Knuckle Knife. The Knuckle Knife does 58 light damage attack and 92 heavy damage attack. The light is blunt, the heavy is pierce. Stamina cost is 8 for a light attack and 21 for a heavy attack, which basically means you get 5 heavy attacks or 13 light attacks. This is the one I use the most. Mostly because my builds are a little trash. But the Knuckle Knife is pretty much good in all situations, but never great. It is not good to use against, it's not the best to use against a lot of things. It can go through mobs easily. Now it will run you out of stamina because it has about the same amount of stamina use as the regular knife, but it is still decent enough to the point where you can get one extra hit with a knife stab. Now it kills emulators safely, not the fastest, but still safely. Uh, it does take a little longer to kill most of their mobs, but you can kill them all. Now let's talk about how to use this. Right. Let's talk about the knuckle knife. This is the one I tend to use the most just because it's very versatile. As I said, damage is not the best with it, especially when you're coming after hunters, but it is still decent enough. I mean, 92 to the chest is still going to do quite a bit of damage. Now, it may not kill someone that's missing a full bar or two half bars, but it's still gonna do quite a bit of damage. And as long as you kind of tickle them with literally any gun in the game that's a primary, you'll be able to kill them pretty easily with a heavy attack. Now, I said the main reason everyone likes this thing is mostly because of the fact that it has a melee that's also a blunt, so you can kill emulators with it easily. Now, granted, your primary weapon can as well too, which is why most people won't take it, but it takes a lot more stamina to kill out an emulator. This at least still gives you the option, if you kill it, to at least go on with your day and continue on. And I mean, I really do love that light attack and how much damage it does. It does quite a bit of damage. Now, granted, that is a headshot. 58 for a light attack is pretty much stronger than anything other than the heavy knife. So it's pretty decent. All right, guys. So that's the basic explanation with all the melee weapons you can get. I said it is going to be mostly up to personal preference. Everyone has a different thing they want to deal with easier. Some people really hate emulators. Some people really hate, you know, concertinas. It's just going to be basically the main thing about them is going to be, what you prefer. Don't take my gospel. A lot of people hate the heavy knife. I love it, but that's just me. You will find your own weapon you want to use, and you will get good with it. Just always stick with that one. Now, granted, depending on the playstyle, if you're running around with a bomb lance, you probably want to have a duster as your secondary because you can't take out emulators at all. But as I said, everything is based on what your preferences are and how you want to play. So on the next video, we'll be talking about the mobs and a little bit better on understanding on what they do and how to take care of them easily. Just stay tuned for that. All right, guys.